Hey, everybody. This is Sports on the Positive Tip, where we have conversations at the intersection of sports and faith. I got to say, Kenny, we've got 3 100-win teams sitting home now instead of still playing in the championship series. You got some thoughts on that, I know.
Yeah, it's the new format is interesting, but I don't think it's as bad as everyone is making it out to be.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about it. I mean, it's still possible to see a rematch in the World Series. I didn't look this up beforehand, so I'll just ask you, when was the last time that happened?
Um,
Back-to-back seasons.
Back-to-back seasons. That's a good question.
I don't know. We'd have to look that up. Yeah.
I don't think it's happened since the wild card's been added.
Yeah. I don't remember. I'm sure it's happened in my lifetime, but I just, some reason I don't remember. Well, Yankees Dodgers, right? Well, all right. We'll have to look that up. And what a week for the NFL. What a great week for my Jets. Not so great week for your Giants. We'll talk about it. And the Browns, probably some hope is alive there with DJ Walker there in Cleveland.
It's crazy. Like the Browns, when they win, Cleveland is just happier. So everyone's happy this week.
Just a happier place. All right, you ready to get at it?
Let's do it.
All right.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
with Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. We are back together. Did a couple of interviews. Kenny Squared was on assignment, as I said. Spanning the world of sports and faith. But we are back together. Lots to get caught up on. Lots to talk about. And we'll get to how Cleveland is a happier place when the Browns are winning. But let's start with baseball. And you've got a lot of thoughts. We've got 3 100-win teams that are home. The Braves, to me, the Braves is still the most stunning one. The Dodgers, I wasn't overly surprised because their pitching has, the injuries and their starting pitching hadn't been good. The Orioles, I guess I wasn't stunned because none of the Orioles really had any playoff experience. So, and you and I have been touting the Texas Rangers since our baseball preview back in March because of one Bruce Bochy. So we're not overly stunned. But reseeding has come up a lot. The Diamondbacks are in the championship series with 84 wins. They were 84 and 78. So it just goes to show you just get in, and you never know what can happen. So talk to me. What are your thoughts and what's the thoughts around reseeding the playoffs after a round here?
All right. So I want to start with why I think this format works.
Okay.
Why this is more of just an odd year, and then talk about some potential changes that I think could work.
Okay.
So let's start with why I like this format. You just nailed it right on the head with the Diamondbacks. In years past, a team like the Diamondbacks would have had zero shot. I think of teams like the Cubs, the Marlins, the Reds, teams that made the playoffs or didn't make the playoffs, but they were still playing meaningful games in September. And a lot of times you saw teams like that mailing it in. Now, I think baseball has found a good balance of creating the sense of urgency without diluting the regular season. Because even the 82 and 80 Yankees would have made the playoffs if we're talking like NBA type of seeding, where you just have way too many teams in the mix. So I think the 6 team in each league format really works. I also think the 3-game series works because one of the complaints has been about layoff, the long layoff, because a lot of these teams, they didn't play for 5+ days.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get to why that's not as big of a deal in a second here. But you look at like a lot of times a 1-game playoff can be too fluky. And now I'm not throwing shade if you win it, because obviously if you win it, you got a good team and everything like that. But like so much can happen in just 1 game. Whether it's your starting pitcher has an off night, is tipping his pitches, or you get a bad call because your umpire and home plate isn't that good, or like a weird error changes the game. Now, obviously, you got to roll with the punches and you still got to perform and everything like that. But to me, having the 3 games seems to work a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some research on this now. So this is our 2nd year of doing the 6-team in each league format, 12-team bracket. 5 out of the 8 teams that got the bye were eliminated in the first round or in the division series. So you have the Braves and the Dodgers this year, along with the Orioles. I think, like you said, I think the Braves is probably the most stunning. The Braves didn't hit at all.
Yeah.
And you want to blame that on the layoff? Fine. The Dodgers, they had awful pitching. Like, you can't win with that type of pitching. I think they gave up like 25 runs in 4 innings or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
crazy.
you can't do that.
Yeah.
And the Orioles, like you said, very inexperienced. They haven't been in the playoffs in 7 years. A lot of times you have teams like that, they kind of go deer in headlights. Adley Rutschman never experienced getting swept until the division series against the Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that type of adversity, it's hard to overcome. Usually, like, you see teams like that, they take it in baby steps.
Yeah.
The only one that had some kind of playoff experience, I think, would be Aaron Hicks. And we all know how well he did under pressure in New York. So no shade at all.
Yeah.
But you look at it, I think like those 3 teams aren't really that surprising. Look at last year. The only teams that got eliminated that had a bye, the Braves and the Dodgers. So like, it might be more the Braves and the Dodgers have a really good regular season construction and not as good of a postseason construction.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe it's just a fluke. It happens. Because it hasn't affected the Astros, who have had it both of the years and still made it to the ALCS both years.
Yeah.
The Yankees as well last year. They made it through the division series and made it to the ALCS. So the top 2 seeds in each league get the bye. 5 out of 8 miss the LCS.
Yeah.
Let's look back to the old format. I'm not going to include 2020 because 2020 was a weird year for a lot of years. 2019 and 2021, the last 2 years that we did the 5-team in each league, the 10-team format. Guess how many teams missed the ALCS or the LCS out of the top 2 seeds? 5.
5. Okay. Wow.
It's the same exact number.
Same thing.
So like, maybe part of it is the layoff, and I understand that there is the aspect of like, if you're playing baseball, having the days off can be a little inconsistent and it's hard to kind of ramp back up. But a few things to keep in mind here. Number one, it is a small sample size. We don't know how this is going to look long term. But also, the layoff in the previous format was either 3 or 4 games as opposed to 5.
Right.
It wasn't like they played the next day. And I feel like that's one of the things that it's going to happen. And layoffs do hurt teams. I think of the stat that existed until 2019. So 2019 is the only exception. If the World Series matchup is a team that swept in the LCS versus a team that went 7 in the LCS, the team that went 7 won in 4 or 5 games every single time.
Wow.
With the exception of 2019.
Wow.
So like, the layoff, it's a thing. However, you never know when that's going to happen and you can't really control it. I think that teams do things that help get them ready. Like I said, the Astros weren't affected by it. The Yankees weren't affected by it last year. And it still affects teams every single year. MLB is not like the NBA, where usually your top 2 teams in each league, one of them is going to represent that league in the championship. It doesn't happen every time.
Yeah.
I was trying to look it up. 2020 was one of the times where it was both the top seeds. It's hard to think of other instances where it was 1 versus 1. I believe the other the last previous one would have been 2013 with the Cardinals and the Red Sox.
Yeah.
So like you weren't going to see the Orioles and the Braves more than likely. It doesn't happen every year.
Yeah.
And so like maybe it's less about the overall structure and more about these teams just hit a wall. Also, look at the matchups that you had. The Phillies own the Braves. Like it seems like they just have their number, especially in postseason play. The Dodgers just didn't have the starting pitching. And also both the Braves and the Dodgers, when was the last time they played an urgent postseason feel type of game?
Right.
Like
I
both
was
of
gonna
them
ask you
had their
that.
division locked
Yeah.
up. So
Yeah.
that also tends to affect a lot of teams. So with all that said, I think there are three things that baseball can look at. I don't know if they would do any of these. I'll start with probably the least possible one here. Change the wild card series to a 2-game series that kind of mirrors the Korean style, where basically the home team has to win 1 game and the road team would have to win both games in order to advance. So basically it's like a best of 3, but the home team automatically gets the first game as a win. Which that could be interesting because like you're giving an advantage to the home team aside from just home field advantage.
Right.
Which like, I mean, you look at the Rays, was home field advantage really a thing? They still only had 15,000 people.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's something to kind of consider. I don't know if they do it because that means less potential games for ESPN and whatnot, but it's a possibility. It would cut down a day of rest, so it would shorten the postseason by a game.
So if I'm the home team, I win that game, series over. But if I'm the road team, I win that game, then we move on to now the next 2.
Yeah, so basically, it would be like a 2-game series. If the home team wins game 1, they win. If the road team wins game 1, they go to a game 2.
Right.
And whoever wins it, it's a winner take all. So
game 2 would be a winner take all if the road team won. Wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And you say that they do that in the Korean league?
Yeah, that's the Korean baseball league. That's how they do their postseason is weird for a lot of different reasons. Cause also like if you're the number 1 seed, you basically don't play until the championship series, I believe.
Huh.
They do a lot of weird stuff, but I thought that would be interesting. I don't know if baseball would do it, but it would kind of add a little bit of, add an extra flair there.
Yeah.
Another option is reseeding. But also reseeding doesn't happen all the time. Like kind of using the NFL style where the number 1 seed automatically takes the lowest seed. Like in the American League, it would have been the same exact matchups in the division series. National League, it would be different, which the Braves playing the Diamondbacks, they might have a better chance than when they play the Phillies. And also maybe with the Dodgers, you never know.
Yeah.
But like I said, it doesn't happen every time. And maybe that could change things up a little bit. And maybe that would give the top seed a little bit more of an advantage because like playing the Phillies who won 95 games or whatever versus playing the 84 win Diamondbacks, there's a huge difference there.
Right.
So I would consider that. I think the other thing, and once again, I don't think they would do it, but follow the NBA model. And if a series is over, start the next series early. So you know how like sometimes you'll have like an overlapping game 1 with a game 7.
Yeah.
To me, that could also like, not only would it condense this, the postseason a little bit, but also it would give a little bit less of a layoff. So like all 4 of these wildcard series were sweeps.
Yeah.
And you could have feasibly started this series like Friday as opposed to Saturday.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
It might be something that they would do, but maybe not.
Yeah. Gotcha. Hold one second. This is so interesting. Ken, let me ask you this, and I want to hear the third one. The NCAA tournament has talked about that for years, and reseeding at the Final Four, where sometimes you'll get the matchup in the national semifinal that you would think, oh my gosh, we should have gotten that as the national championship, but it always seems to work out, well. I think there's some noise because I listen. I don't know how else to say this. The Phillies just Mike Clark's gonna hate us. But the Phillies just happen to have the Braves number here, and I mean, I don't know how else to put that. Go ahead, hit that last one you were gonna say.
Well, and I just think sometimes teams really like tend to turn it on in the postseason.
Yeah,
Like Bryce Harper, he hit another home run yesterday. Like he's been on fire. Kyle Schwarber, dude's batting like 190, and he still hits like the biggest home runs. So
yeah,
so yeah, I think looking at reseeding is an option. Maybe adopt the Korean League. But yeah, like I think looking at potentially starting some of these series a little bit earlier or spacing it out because the postseason's different anyway.
yeah,
So like if your team is done and you can start your series on Thursday, game 1 Thursday, game 2 Saturday, game 3
yeah.
Monday.
That was the third one you said. Yeah, absolutely. And remember the NHL last year, they were asking them to just go ahead and move the finals up. So sometimes that's a little harder, right? Because if I remember right, both of the both of the conference final series finished quickly, and then it was going to be a week until the finals started. But the arena is already being, the arenas are being used and stuff like that. I don't know that you'd have that problem in baseball though, because baseball stadiums are probably not being used, like an arena in the NHL or NBA, or where they share it, like Madison Square Garden, Rangers and Knicks. I want to go back and ask you this question, and we'll jump into what's happening now in the playoffs. What can, because there's definitely something to this, I think, because this has been for a while, if we really went back and dug in, that the teams that usually have to scrap and fight and play these really tense games from early September all the way through, they usually tend to do well at least at the beginning of the playoffs. And we're seeing that with the Diamondbacks this year. They had to fight. I mean, they had to fight off the Reds, the Cubs, all the teams you named, just to get in. And it didn't look like they were going to get in until that final weekend. Whereas at like you said, when was the most meaningful game? The Dodgers ran away with the West. The Braves ran away with the East. The Orioles, they still had to put Tampa Bay away about a week, or so before they had that big series. But the Braves and Dodgers in particular, the last 2 years, really didn't have any big games or didn't have anybody chasing them for the last month or so. What could a Dave Roberts or a Brian Stichter do, to get their teams more prepared in September for October?
I think maybe start treating some of these other series like they are postseason games.
Yeah.
I know that's hard because like if you're looking at the standings and you're 17 games up and playing the Royals, like that's kind of hard to like get up for a game like that. But I think kind of just adding that sense of urgency, because like especially when you think you're that far up, you don't really have that sense of urgency. I feel like sometimes you saw that with the Yankees, where they just were like, "Oh well, we'll figure it out."
Yeah,
but maybe, I don't know what that looks like though.
I don't know either, but I think they should call Joe Torre, because I really, you mentioned the Yankees, and I think the latter Yankee teams, the Joe Girardi ones, even the Aaron Boone ones, the Yankees have come out flat, at times, but they never came out flat in that Joe Torre era. And I'm talking about like, the 96 teams through 2003, teams, they always seem to be ready game one. One can argue maybe in 97, they came out flat against the then Cleveland Indians. And they still almost pulled that series out, but yeah, I mean, they seem to be ready. And some of those teams ran away with the division. I mean, the 98 team, nobody, they had that division clinched extremely early, and they came out like gangbusters once the playoffs started. I remember they had a little scare with Minnesota. Chuck Knobloch had a couple of errors, but overall, I mean, so I don't know. Maybe it was just Joe Torre started talking to them about playoffs back in early September. Listen, guys, these are the potential matchups. I'm sure he wouldn't say that publicly, but probably behind the scenes. I mean, there was some things I think he did with those teams to get them ready, for October. And I'm not blaming the managers here. I'm kind of glad. I love Dave Roberts and Kevin Cash, but I'm almost glad they're because the games last night, I was able to see the whole game, and I'm like, what's the last time a playoff game ended at like 10:30? Usually being only the fourth inning at 10:30. But Kevin Cash and Dave Roberts, oh my gosh, they'd be taking pictures in and out. So this is an interesting conversation. It really is. I think I'm with you what you said at the beginning, and now I want to jump into the playoffs. I think baseball has got some things nailed here. The time, like I just said, a guy that's used to getting up early like me and and going to bed at a decent time, I was able to watch the whole game last night. And in the past I haven't. In the past, the World Series, I'm like, it's 11 o'clock. It's only in the fifth inning, man. I gotta go to bed, I just start falling asleep right in front of there. And I think this playoff format, I mean, even if you compare to the other sports, 12 teams, right? Make it. What is that? 12 out of 30 teams make it?
Yeah.
So there's 18 teams that go home. I think the NBA is a little bit the opposite, of the amount of teams that make it and then the amount that, go home. So I like this format. I do. The one I would sign off on is the opening wild card rounds. And I like that you're on the road, you got to win. And then that also makes you play a little harder so that you don't have to be on the road for that one game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also like it gives, because like you look at the number 3 and 4 seeds, it's always your division winner. And then the team that had a really good year, but the division winner was so amazing that you just couldn't catch them.
Yeah.
This year, the Rays and the Phillies.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
giving them that extra advantage might help.
Yeah.
So I did see this. This goes back to, oh gosh, what year was it? 2012?
Yeah.
Whenever they added the second wild card. Yeah, 2012. There's been 2 matchups of the number 1 seeds. 2013, Red Sox and Cardinals, and then 2020. I don't know if you can even count 2020 because it was such a weird year.
Shortened season, right? I like that. There's upsets. I mean, I didn't like it last year when the Padres came out and beat the Mets, but I mean, the Mets were another 101 win team, but they don't fall into that category because they were playing important games right up until the end. The last weekend of the season. Not that they knew they were in, but they were trying to win the division. That year. So, all right, let's jump in. This is interesting. So we'll be quick. Let's start with the American League first. You're kind of happy right now because the Astros are down 2-0. And Texas won those 2 games in Houston. But I don't know if you saw some of the stats on the game last night. Houston's been awful at home this year and unbelievable on the road. I think they're like 55 and 30, something like that, 31, 32 on the road. They've just been spectacular. That math doesn't really add up right, but I think they have 53 or 55 road wins this year, and they've been terrible at home. So it's not a shock. But down at 0-2, I think they're an example of a team that's come out flat, in this championship series, sort of like what we were just now talking about. And Texas, we've talked about them all year, you and I. They just really symbolize what their manager stands for. He's always been calm, cool, and I got to tell you, man, he takes his team to the World Series. He should march right into the Hall of Fame. It would be the 3rd team, and I don't know that there's any managers that have taken 3 different teams to the World Series. We forget that he managed the Padres in '98. Obviously they got swept by the Yankees. But obviously, he took the Giants 3 championships. And now if he takes this team, who were kind of doormat the last few years, the Texas Rangers, yeah, they had a couple of key acquisitions, but he took over a lot of the same team that, last year didn't really do anything. And so they're calm, they're cool, they seem to know. I mean, they came out last night or like yesterday afternoon, which was another beautiful thing. I was able to watch most of that game too. It was at 4 o'clock, but they came out yesterday knowing when they needed to not work the count because Framber, who I love, was flat, man, and they came right out and were aggressive, and I think their first 4 swings were base hits or hits. So I don't know that I like the Astros' chances of coming back here, and which would mean we'll have another another champion, this year, a different champion, and I don't know how long that's been. You do. But what are your overall thoughts here on the Astros and Texas championship series so far?
Before I get to the thoughts, last repeat champion 2000 Yankees.
Oh, 2000 Yankees, 99 and 2000.
Yeah, well, 98, 99, 2000, but yeah, that was the last time a team has
Champion.
repeated
How about
as
a World
champion.
Series rematch, which is still a possibility? Is that 77, 78?
World Series rematch 77, 78 is all I can say.
My gosh. Wow. Okay.
Also shows how hard it is to repeat in baseball.
It really is. It is. It is.
But yeah, I agree with you, especially, and I'm very, very curious to see how Game 3 goes because your boy Max Scherzer is towing the slab. But like they've been hitting, but also their pitching has been spectacular.
Yeah.
And I'm very torn as a Yankee fan as to whether to be like happy because like these ex-Yankees are dealing, or mad that those ex-Yankees who could have been Yankees are dealing. Like Jordan Montgomery's been amazing. Completely shut them down in Game 1. Nathan Eovaldi also had a great game as well. He is, I think, like the 6th pitcher in postseason history to have like 24 plus strikeouts in his first 3 starts. He has been great.
This is a blueprint. I'll just say this real quick. I want you to finish. This is a blueprint that you really have to look at your pitching depth. Because when you look at Jordan Montgomery, you look at Eovaldi, and you also look at Zach Wheeler, who's now a number 1 starter, but he wasn't on the Mets, right? He was depth, number 3, number 4 starter. These guys also, they weren't number 1 starters with the Yankees. They were number 3, number 4 starters, right? But they're depth. And now you look at these guys stepping up in the postseason like this, they were good, solid pitchers who all of a sudden here in the postseason have become great. You don't get rid of your depth. Taijuan Walker is another example, and I'm not sure why he's not pitching. He might be hurt. Why he's not pitching in the chat, or unless we haven't seen him. I haven't seen him in the postseason yet. Maybe he just his turn hasn't come up, but he's another example. I think he won 16 or 17 games in the regular season. So hold on to your pitching depth, man. It's hard to come by. And, Texas figured out they needed a lot of pitching. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, and I think that's really what it comes down to because, like, Texas was good. They were like they had the division for the most part.
Yeah.
And then they went out and they got Jordan Montgomery and they got Max Scherzer.
Yeah.
And they also got Aroldis Chapman.
Yeah.
Who I had seen this on a forum. If Aroldis Chapman strikes out Jose Altuve to send the Rangers to the World Series, I'm going to be also very mixed feelings about that.
But listen, his job, man, his number 1 job last night, he didn't do it. They won, but his number 1 job out there was to get out Jordani, who is unbelievable in the postseason, by the way. And what does he do? He gets a home run off of him. So I know you got the first couple of outs, but still, it's like you're in there to get this one of the best left-handed hitters in all of baseball out. And he doesn't. But anyway.
But yeah, I mean, and that's where I'm kind of torn, but also even from beside my Yankee anti-Astros bias, to me, I always like seeing different teams in the World Series. Because if the Astros get eliminated, you're to have teams that, the Rangers have never won the World Series. And they also haven't been in since 2011. 2011. The Phillies, who, yes, they were in last year, but they haven't won the whole thing since 2008. And And then obviously you got the Diamondbacks, who haven't been in it since 2001. I wish I had this up. I saw the lineup the last time they were in the NLCS in 2007. It's some fun names there. But it's nice to kind of see that. And yeah, I think I'm not counting the Astros out. Even if they go down 0-3, I'm still not counting them out until that final out, because they are the Astros.
Okay.
But I do think it's definitely advantage Texas, because I look at that starting pitching, and I mean, it's been really good. And if Max Scherzer can kind of keep it going, which might also make you feel mixed because of how bad he was last year. But
Scherzer has never been a big time postseason pitcher or in big time games, no matter what team he's been on. I mean, so I don't know what to expect from him. I can see why Texas is giving him the ball. I would give him the ball, because you might get vintage Max Scherzer, who will be unhittable, but he just has not been, he's not been in the big spot like Verlander. He hasn't come through in a big spot like Verlander has over his career, so we'll see. I can't say I now give the advantage to Texas, especially being up 2-0. Again, because of Bruce Bochy, and don't hear what I'm not saying here. I don't think Bruce Bochy is actually a much better manager than Dusty Baker. Dusty Baker has proven himself everywhere he's gone. It's just that Bochy has been in this big spot so many times, and his teams always seem, to come through. So it's going to be interesting. A must win for Houston, right? Game 3.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't go down 0-3.
Okay.
I know, like, Texas is still not that experienced, but you go down 0-3, Bruce Bochy is not letting the gas off the pedal.
Okay. All right, let's go to the National League. I'll start with a question for you real quick. Is there another team in baseball that has the type of moxie and swagger that the Phillies have? And I don't usually like that stuff, but I have to say, in their sense, is kind of earned. I think they've kind of earned the right to be, I'm not, this is a bad comparison, but the team I remember from my youth that was kind of like that was the Cincinnati Reds, the Joe Morgan, Pete Rose Reds. They were very, very arrogant. They just knew when they walked on the field, they were going to win. These Phillies, man, there is something, and their crowd, they don't sit down. And you and I have been to that stadium. It's an amazing experience. It's a beautiful, beautiful stadium, but that crowd doesn't sit down. They're into every pitch. I love it. Bryce Harper staring at Orlando Arcia as he rounded the bases, not once, but twice, was priceless, man. And I don't usually like that stuff, but I'm like, Arcia is a veteran. He's got to know somebody's going to capture that and send it out. Attaboy Harper. I mean, come on. And just like I'm sure the Mets are taking notes that as the Phillies were celebrating, they're yelling out, bleep the Mets, so, which is kind of weird, right? Why would they even be a thought for them? But do you think the Phillies, are they the team that has the most swagger here? I mean, and now let me get your thoughts on the rest of the series.
Yeah, out of the teams remaining, the only one that might come close is the Astros.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever saw that when they clinched the division, what Alex Bregman said.
Yeah. No, what did he say?
They were like, I wonder what it's going to be like for the Astros when they don't win the division. And then he said, guess we'll never know. And then started spraying the champagne everywhere. So like, they have a little bit of it, but I think the Phillies, it's 100% on them. And because like Bryce Harper, it's crazy just the evolution that he has taken over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
He's like, everyone totally understood when after the 2018 season, they let him walk and he signs the massive contract with the Phillies. And then they go on to win the title.
Without him. Yeah.
Without him. And like he had that, and for a while it was injury and then not really playing that well and the team's not performing. And now they've got the formula down to getting to the postseason. They play with a lot of urgency. And man, every time Bryce Harper hits a home run, it just seems like it's one of those like iconic type of moments, even if it's not really that big of a home run. Yeah. Just the way that he celebrates, the way that I feel like he's being embraced there. it's like he's a very good leader, but also a really good player. Because sometimes like you'll have guys that are really good leaders, but not necessarily like the best player on your team. A lot of people, they'll use the example of Jeter versus A-Rod with like the mid 2000s Yankees. Jeter was clearly the leader, but A-Rod might have been the better player. I might disagree with that, but that's fine.
Right.
But like Bryce Harper is definitely like their best player and also has become like a much more mature leader. Are there times where he still flames out on Angel Hernandez for a bad check swing call? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are there times where he'll still try to get into people's face and everything, and he might be a little bit too much? Yes. But at the same time, he has shown that he is a great leader. And they have a very good cast of guys that just hit clutch home runs. Like I mentioned Kyle Schwarber before, but also Nick Castellanos. I didn't realize he's got 5 home runs so far.
I mean, he's been unbelievable. He really has.
And this is a side note, have you seen his whole, like the Nick Castellanos curse type of thing?
No.
Where he always hits home runs in like really sad, somber moments?
No.
Like,
no.
The one that started it all was, Tom Brenneman when he resigned on air.
Yes.
And he hits a home run
with
there.
the Reds. And yeah.
And like there was another one where like they were honoring a veteran like on the air, and then he hits a home run right afterwards. That also happened like I think yesterday or the day before. Because they were talking about Charlie Manuel, who is like
very
in
sick,
serious health.
Yeah.
And as they're talking about it, he hits a home run. I'll have to send you. There's a whole compilation of it. I'll have to send it to you.
Oh, that's unbelievable. Yeah, and Schwarber, 197, but 40 the Phillies go out and sign him. He has 46 home runs last year, 47 this year. And it seems like he's so clutch. And again, this is a guy that has been in a lot of postseasons, right? With the Cubs and with the Red Sox. I mean, he's so clutch, and yet he's also very arrogant, as well. I mean, there's just something special about this team. I think Harper teams passed on him, right? Namely the Yankees, the Dodgers. But boy, oh boy, he's fit that city like a glove, because he's not like your superstar that doesn't get his uniform dirty, man. He dives for stuff, with Matt Olson, unfortunately kicked him in the elbow, last week. And he's just like, oh, no, I'm fine, and that was the elbow that was surgically repaired. I mean, he just fits that city, extremely well too. Do you give the Diamondbacks a chance here?
Part of me says no, but also like crazier stuff has happened.
Yeah.
Because like I could totally see them heading back to Arizona and becoming more of like this is like a 2-1 series heading into game 4, or
right.
a 3-2 series, Philly leading, heading back to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Like I could see them making it a series.
Yeah.
But also I feel like Philly is way too battle tested. They have the formula of making it to the World Series. And I think one of their biggest stumbling blocks was maybe the Braves, or possibly staring the Dodgers in the face, but they don't have to deal with that. I feel like they kind of see their path is there, and I think they're just going to take it.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think if the D-backs, they gotta steal one of these games in Philadelphia, because I don't think they have a huge home field advantage in at what is that, Chase Field now. It changed that name several times too, of that ballpark. Beautiful ballpark, but they're not nearly as loud as the Philly fans. I think they have a clear home field there. And I think if they steal it tonight, it might be a longer series, like a 6 or 7 game series. But they hit their ace last night, man. I mean, this guy is definitely going to get some votes for Cy Young, and the Phillies had him figured out early, So that's really tough. They don't have deep, starting pitching depth, the Diamondbacks, So it's going to be fun. So we're saying probably right now Texas Phillies, yes?
Yeah, I think that, like, in general, I'd be surprised if it's not that.
Okay. All right. Let's jump to the NFL. Baseball is so much fun this time of year, man. And I'm going to come back to it with my inspiration in just a bit. So the NFL, I had a joyous Sunday, and the Jets pull that unbelievable game out against the Eagles, and with Jalen Hurts, their defense really, really stepped up. And I don't know, Ken, I gotta say this was a game that, and I want to get to the Giants and Browns, and I'll shut up and let you talk about them. But this was really a game that when Aaron Rodgers first got hurt, remember I said if Zach Wilson could just be good enough, this was one of those games where he was just good enough, right? He didn't have a spectacular game. Now, Bryce, this guy is special. I don't know how he avoids tackles. Every time it looks like he's going to take a big hit, he kind of moves it to the last second. And he's such a patient runner. He waits for his blockers. And the Jets' offensive line has overall been pretty good. And they have to be, because Wilson's not that good at going out of the pocket. But this was a game where, hey, remember I said if their defense plays like they're supposed to, even though they had some injuries, so they really, really stepped up. So it shows that their defense has some depth. And if Wilson could just not be terrible, if he could just be good enough, then the Jets still might do some damage. And you said if they're 3-3, after these first tough 6 games, the rest of their schedule doesn't look that bad, that they might be in the mix. And so that's where we're at. I'm excited, cautiously excited. They have a week off now to get a little bit more healthier in the secondary, the guys that were out. So I'm cautiously excited. I'd like to see him throwing a lot more to Garrett Wilson, who I think is a stud, can be the next best top receiver in the league. I think he has all the tools, but you got to get him the ball. And, he reminds me of DK Metcalf. I'm not putting him on that level yet, but he's got that type of body and that type of speed, I think, to be such a playmaker. So Wilson is a lot of work he still needs to be done, but he's definitely improved and he's good enough. And that's a big win. I think the days of us seeing somebody going undefeated in a football season might be, although, the Pats, that's not that long ago, but the 17 games now makes it really tough. These Thursday night games make it tough. Monday night, then you got to play again on Sunday. That makes it tough. And so I thought it was a big Jets win. I want to go first to the Browns and the Giants. I'm going to shut up, though, and I want you to talk about the Browns and what the atmosphere is there in Cleveland, and then how you're feeling about your Giants.
Yeah, real quick also on the Jets.
Yeah.
So obviously they have to bye this week. Next 3 games, the Giants, who we'll get to in a moment. The Chargers, who have not been playing well, they're 2-3.
Strange team.
And then the Raiders. So shout out to Tim there.
They're a strange team also, though. The Raiders too. They're a little bit strange. The Raiders and Chargers, if anybody can figure them out and tell me where they'll wind up at the end of the year, all power to them. I have no clue whether those teams are contenders or pretenders. But go ahead.
But let's say, so those next 3 games, they're 3-3. If they can finish like 5-4, I think that I think that could really take it to the next level. Because then, that's where, the make or break time for the Jets here is going to be at this point now that they've made it past this. The next marker, week 11 against the Bills that's a 4:25 game Sunday.
Yeah.
And then the following, they play on Black Friday against the Dolphins.
First time, so right? First time the NFL is having a Black Friday game. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think those 2 games, if you can go and split those, especially if you can beat the Bills, you'll have the tiebreaker and probably have a better record than that. That would be huge.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because right now, the Jets, you're looking at the playoff picture. I mean, it's too early to actually do playoff picture stuff, but they're right in there, and that's where you want to be. The Browns, everyone is excited here. Did you know this? The Browns have allowed the least amount of yards in 45 years or something like that through the first 6 games.
I did not know that.
So they have been, their defense has been amazing.
Yeah.
I would say that they have a really good claim to best defense in the league.
Yeah.
Because they've really looked really good against a lot of the top guys. I know Joe Burrow was kind of off of injury, so you might dismiss that. Lamar Jackson, even though they lost, he didn't look as good as he has in other games when they played them.
Yeah.
Like they've played really well. And kind of like with Zach Wilson, I feel like you just need Deshaun Watson to be just good enough. There's a little bit more pressure on him now because you don't have Nick Chubb. And I feel like if you had Nick Chubb, basically be the game manager. Don't make the big mistake. However, I think there's a little bit more pressure on him. Obviously, like they were able to win with a backup. Excellent. But I think they could do this. I don't know if they'll win the division, although they could be the one team that goes worst to first this year. You never know. Their division also is pretty tight. But I think that they have a good formula here. I think you look at, like, obviously the 49ers are a great team. And losing Christian McCaffrey and like all of the other injuries they've had hurt, but they still were able to put themselves in a position to win. Cleveland's loving it. And it's weird because they're still not the full embrace of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
But definitely this defense led by Myles Garrett, who might be the defensive player of the year.
He's been unbelievable. Absolutely. The backup quarterback had a very interesting career. I didn't know he was like the XFL or one of those off leagues. He just went there and like just tore it up. And that was why he got a second chance. But he was a great college player, and I'm forgetting where. I knew it because I had heard of his name, and when they said it on, so I was like, okay, I remember him in college. But Watson's just been okay though. He hasn't been, and again, tough to root for, right? But I thought that Watson would be the one carrying that team, and he hasn't been. It's been the defense. You're right, and the offense has just been good enough, so far. And I don't know that the offense is going to be even that great when Watson comes back, because they do miss Chubb, so much. So they're gonna have to get by on their defense, and they might. I think that division is winnable, for them. So so I'm glad that the folks at Cleveland are excited. But just the opposite of the Giant fans here in New York, man. There is, I gotta tell you, there's just a wave of extreme disappointment over this 1-5 start. So where do you see it from your point of view?
Side note, PJ Walker, Temple.
Oh, he played. That's right, and he was a 4-year starter, right, at Temple. So I knew it was somewhere local. I started to say Rutgers, so I would have been wrong there, but it's Temple. Yeah, not a big time, conference that they play in, but I remember his stats were just like off the charts.
Yeah, and as far as the Giants go, I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, so Caleb Williams looks pretty good in Big Blue, right?
But see, you texted me that. What do you do with Daniel Jones? I mean, he's got a huge contract unless somebody's going to take that off the Giants' hands, which is usually does not happen in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard because I just have a few stats up here. The Giants all year have scored 2 touchdowns on offense through 6 games.
Oh my God.
And I think what makes it so much worse is not even so much how badly they've played, but the fact that it's been on the national spotlight for most of this time.
They've been on national TV every week, just about,
And they've scored double digits in points twice. Once was against the Cardinals. It's been dreadful. And I don't know if it's just Daniel Jones. I don't think it's Dayball. I don't think he's in over his head. And maybe part of it is Saquon getting hurt and then not
definitely
being there.
Yeah.
But they've looked like a completely different team, where last year, a lot of the games where you thought were fairly winnable or fairly losable.
Yeah.
They looked scrappy and could fight back. Here, they've just, whenever they've been overmatched, you could tell they've just been overmatched. Yeah. And I've seen a lot of people talking about the last play and brutal way to lose a Sunday night game.
Yeah.
And also it doesn't look great for the league, doesn't look great for the refs. But you got to score more than 9 points.
Yeah.
Like you've got to put up a touchdown.
Right.
I'm not even saying like, oh yeah, put up like 21 points a game or anything like that. You got to put up a touchdown.
Yeah.
I don't think they've played, I think 4 primetime games, 3. They've yet to score a touchdown in primetime, like offensively.
It's stunning to me because especially second half last year, the Giants offense was cooking, man. They were scoring points. It's amazing that this is kind of a lost season, at 1-5. I mean, there's a lot of football left, right? With the 17 games now, that one game extra makes a big difference. So 6 games in, they have 11 games left. Of course, they're not going to go 11-0, but can they win 8 of those games? But then is that even good enough? I don't know. But they don't look like a team that's ready to go on a big run here.
No. And it's hard because, like you said, you're kind of stuck with Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing this on I don't know if it was a podcast or something. Like, you have the franchise tag for situations like this, where a guy plays really well in his contract year, and you're not really too sure about him.
Yeah.
And the Giants could have easily just franchise tagged Daniel Jones, and he would have still been playing for something. Now, like, you can't cut him this year because the cap hit would be ridiculous.
No. Yeah.
I believe it's after next year, the cap hit wouldn't be that bad, or I think after a certain time it becomes non-guaranteed. So, like, you could feasibly do it. I mean, but also, who would trade for Daniel Jones right now?
Yeah. Nobody. Nobody. And I don't think he's been totally the problem. It's really, it's the offensive line. If you want to just place blame somewhere, they've just been, they were like they were like 4 or 5 years ago, or towards the end of Eli's run here. I thought they had fixed it with all their draft picks. So if they have a high draft pick, which if they keep going like this, they will. They're not going to take a quarterback. They're going to take the best offensive lineman in the country. I don't know who that is, but that's what they'll take because the pressure will be on them to fix that if they go down this road. I think that's been it. Their defense hasn't been as good as I thought they would be, although I thought they were very, very good on Sunday. To hold Buffalo to just 14, I thought was really good. I thought their defense would be better overall, and maybe that was this past game was a good turning point or a good sign that they're going to be good the rest of the way here. But I don't know, the Giants. So it's the opposite of what's happening in Cleveland, man. The air is a little bit out of the balloon here, man. A little bit overshadowed from the big Jets win, but all right, here's our segment of what are you watching this Sunday? So I got 4 games here for you. And I had to obviously put Washington at the Giants. That's at 1:00. Come on, man.
Watch that.
You're not gonna watch it. All right. 1:00. Here's another interesting matchup at 1:00. Detroit at Baltimore.
That'll be very interesting. That I'd be more up for watching than the Giants.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, here it's going to be Browns Colts, which will be
Browns Colts will be on there. Yeah, and their quarterback looks like he's out for the year. The Colts.
I feel bad. Shout out to Nate. He's upset about that too.
Yeah.
But I think also you look at the Lions. The Lions have been really good. They've they haven't, like, I feel like there was a lot of people that definitely overhyped them. I feel like they've kind of lived up to being what people thought they would be.
Yeah.
But also the Ravens have played really well. And as guys start to get healthier, which I feel like is a theme for Baltimore, I think that they could be really dangerous. Right now, they lead the division by a half a game on everyone else, but they can really start to separate themselves.
Yeah. That's a big matchup, actually. I think with so much at stake for both teams. I don't know the 4:00 games. I think the one that I think is the best matchup out of that is, and it's kind of a classic matchup, the Steelers at the Rams. The Rams I'm going to throw in there. I have no idea who they are. I don't know. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams won like 12 or 13 games, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they, had a sub 500 record. Steelers, same way. The Steelers, that was a big win before. I guess they had a bye this past week, but 2 weeks ago against Baltimore was a huge win for them. And maybe they'll turn the corner. I think that's going to be an interesting game at 425.
Yeah, I would say that's probably, I think the way you said it is perfect. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, especially with both of the head coaches there, Sean McVay and Mike Tomlin. They're so good, but also sometimes they can only do but so much to help their teams.
Yeah.
I think one that sticks out for me, though, is the Chargers and the Chiefs.
Yeah.
The Chargers are kind of like gasping for air a little bit. Like, they're not dead by any means because it's still that early. But, like, you don't want to get blown out by your rival in that way. But also the Chiefs have to keep proving that, because there's been times where, like, they've won every game except for week 1. But, like, they haven't looked great while doing it. I think of when they played the Jets. Like, they could have easily lost that game if a couple calls didn't go their way.
Yeah.
Like, they just haven't looked like I think of the Chiefs have kind of looked like the Golden State Warriors at their peak, where it's just like they're on a whole different level. They haven't really looked like that yet this year. So I think they still have a little bit to prove. Now, that doesn't mean that they still won't win and they still won't continue to be dominant, but
I agree with everything you said. I'll go with, though, I think the game of the day, and it's tough, man. I love football, but if you watch a 1 o'clock game, then a 4 o'clock game, for me, it's always been hard to also watch the Sunday night game, or at least all of it. So I might take a pause at, maybe 5 o'clock and step away from football for a bit. I may do that this Sunday, because this Sunday night game, I'm anxious to see Miami at Philly.
Oh yeah. Both could have a slight claim to best team in the league.
Yeah.
I think people would still probably say San Francisco.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a big matchup, I think, for both of them to kind of say, like, especially for the quarterbacks, because sometimes like Tua is kind of not given the respect that he deserves. Also Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
So, like, it could be very interesting in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We ready to get to some inspiration?
Let's do it.
I think there was a little breaking news, though. We'll mention this real quick, and we can talk about it a little bit more when we do our NBA preview. That Kevin Porter Jr., because we talked about that in the news a couple of times yesterday. They dropped the charges on the broken neck that his girlfriend had. And they said that was a previous injury, right? So that charge was dropped, not the rest of them, though. So he's still in a lot of trouble. But I see where the Rockets were able to trade him and to Oklahoma City, but Oklahoma City is expected to cut him right away. And so teams do that. So just real quick, that happens a lot in the NBA, because when you cut and kind of and Porter Jr., now the salary goes towards OKC, but then when they cut him like that, they get a little bit of a break on the salary cap, which enables them to probably go out and sign another player. So that's why they would do something like that. I don't think any team is going to touch him. Like I say, he's a good player. He's not a great player anyway, but even with that, I don't think any team's going to touch him until this is all cleared up. And maybe we'll wait and see and talk a little bit more next week about the whole Miles Bridges situation with him violating orders of protection, which just makes zero sense to me. You're getting another shot in the NBA and you violate, it makes zero sense to me, but we can talk a little bit more about that next week. All right. My inspiration, I'll try to be relatively quick. I'm just, mine is a little bit weird this week, because I'm just still, how can I put this? I'm sure there's still a lot of people in the country like me, or like you, and you're a little bit of an exception for your age. To me, this time, the World Series is still just something enormously special. I started to use the word sacred, but I won't use that word, but the World Series is still just really, really special. And less and less people every year tend to watch it. The World Series used to draw in kind of fans who were on the outskirts, but they had to watch the World Series. But I just spent time, random time. And I don't have a lot of time to spend during the day, but before we got on, I just started to look up guys who I knew did extremely well in the postseason of World Series. And it just is amazing to me. And I'm sure I left a lot of people off this list. But I'm really amazed. I'm looking for somebody this year that's going to step up that we wouldn't expect to step up. Maybe like if the Phillies get in their second baseman, we would expect, a Bryson Stott to have, an unbelievable World Series, or, Brandon Marsh, somebody like that. Texas, maybe their center fielder, who had this great triple yesterday, up the gap, but yeah, just an okay regular season. But players that was so consistent over the years, I just jotted down a few. I won't read all the stats. I wrote a lot down, but Yogi Berra probably is the one that gets mentioned the most. He played in 75 World Series games over 14 years. Unbelievable. The Yankees didn't sweep a lot of World Series back then. They won them in 6 or 7 games. And so his batting average was 259. He had 12 homers, 39. He batted 270. He had 259 at bats in the World Series. He batted 274, 12 homers, 39 RBIs. He still holds the record for playing in the most World Series games. And I don't think anybody's going to catch that. Reggie Jackson was great. He played in 27 World Series games. He batted 357, 10 home runs, and 24 RBIs in 27 World Series games. When the lights came on, man, Reggie Jackson was right there. Manny Ramirez, he was much better in the championship series than he was in the World Series. That was kind of odd, an odd thing in his career. His championship series stats were off the charts, but I wrote down his World Series ones. He played in 4 different World Series, 21 games, 4 homers, 14 RBIs, 247. Not anything, that spectacular. Who also was like him was Albert Pujols. In the championship series, he was money. World Series is just okay. He played in 16 World Series games. He batted 255, 4 homers, and 8 RBIs, although I would say at least 2 of those World Series home runs were huge. Who was unbelievable in the postseason, but I don't think he ever got to the World Series, was Carlos Beltran. He played in 65 postseason games. He batted 307, 16 home runs, and 42 RBIs. And I think 8 of those home runs was in that 2004 season when they didn't get, when that was the Albert Pujols series, I think, or was that the next year? I'm not sure, but they couldn't get past the Cardinals. And that was the year they got Beltran at the trading deadline from the Kansas City Royals. And that was how you got that big contract with the Mets, because, Beltran, everybody knew he was a really good player, but he, Kansas City didn't do anything. Could he play on the stage? And he showed he could. Your boy, Altuve, he's been unbelievable in the postseason. He has 24 postseason home runs, 50 RBIs. But in the World Series, he's batted 256 with 4 homers, 9 RBIs. Another one of your most favorite players is Big Papi.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, he played in 85 postseason games, 289, 17 home runs, and 61 RBI. He was money in the postseason. 14 World Series games. He batted 455, 3 homers, 14 RBIs. I'm looking for an October hero, Kenny, this year. Who's going to step up? Maybe it'll be Castellanos. If they get to the World Series, maybe it'll be, the third baseman for Texas or their right fielder. I'm looking for somebody to be a Reggie Jackson or David Ortiz in the World Series this year. More than likely, it's going to be Bryce Harper, who we'll expect. So anyway, that's my inspiration. I'm looking for a hero, an October hero this year to carry their team to the championship and get the new car for the World Series and say, I'm going to Disney World, something like that. So anyway, I'll keep quiet. What you got for us?
Well, you were mentioning postseason heroes.
Yes.
A guy that stuck out to me. It's not coming up. Well, I guess it's decent. 2012 Marco Scutero.
Wow. Wow. There you go. That's a good one. Go ahead.
But yeah,
Marco
so here's,
Scutero. Wow.
hold on one second.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. All right, so real quick, I want to talk about Auburn. Auburn
Yes.
University, known well for, I think of two guys, Charles Barkley and Cam Newton.
Yeah.
And
Good.
but recently they've been known for having kind of a small revival. It started out with 5 girls that just wanted to do like a weekly prayer meeting, like 5 students, I believe. And through that, it kind of grew to having like a couple hundred people, and like some area pastors ended up coming and being a part of it. And it ended up growing into this whole event that they used the arena, and it was like 5,000 people attended, 200 people gave their lives to the Lord, and several people got baptized. And one of the people that got baptized was on the football team, and he really wanted to see amazing things happen and power and awesomeness. And but he was afraid to get baptized, so his head coach got into the water with him.
Wow.
And helped baptize him.
Wow.
So it's just really cool to see.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that needs to be shouted out to the mountaintop. That's awesome. And who's his head coach?
I don't have the name.
Okay, no, that's okay. We could easily look that up. Because I know that one of their previous head coaches is not that well liked these days, because he's a senator, Tommy Tuberville. It was one of Auburn's head coaches, and that's an odd name too. But anyway, we don't talk politics, so we won't even get into that. But that was why I asked. You missed one really famous Auburn alumni that might even surpass Barkley and Cam.
What's that?
That would be one Mr. Bo Jackson.
Oh, duh.
Yeah. But I think you named 2 really good ones. That is amazing. We really need revival, don't we? And
Yep.
and it's amazing when we see that happening on these campuses, like that. So yeah, we got to shout that out. And if you have a link, post it on our Facebook page of the player that asked his coach to step in the water with him. That's just awesome. I love that. All right, man, you ready to take us home?
Yeah.
All right,
Kenny Squared End
Kenny.
with Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next time.
Absolutely. And look for later today. We have a special interview edition that'll be out either later today or very early in the morning. That's going to be a little bit different, talking about God's love and the 5 love languages. So, but other than that, we'll be back talking sports and faith next week.
Yep.
All right.